Welcome everyone, my name is Rigel and welcome to the third part of my comprehensive analysis on the November window of the FIFA World Cup qualifiers. That was quite a mouthful, but today we are circling in on Europe, which many regard to be kind of the mecca of football. It's a lot of clubs and leagues in Europe which are seeking out players from further abroad and of course within Europe as well. But today we are talking about international football, not club football, and I personally think international football is much more entertaining and much more dramatic, and even some people who like club football more than international football had to admit, this time around we've gotten some insane results from the qualifiers for the World Cup. And as usual, I'm gonna start not by looking at the matches that have happened in this window, but rather these are the matches that happened in the last window, last month in October. We had some crazy results, of course. But like for example, Ireland beating Armenia. Let's come back to Ireland in a minute. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Let's start with these two matches. Norway, Estonia. This was an expected victory for Norway. It didn't fare so well against Estonia last time, admittedly, but this time, they beat Estonia resoundingly. In the first half, I don't think anyone scored, or maybe Estonia scored, but in the second half, the guys really came out. Antonio Nusa, Holland, of course. I'll get into Norway a little bit later, but this was an expected victory, and it was a pretty resounding victory as well. Then we moved to Armenia versus Hungary, where Hungary barely beat them by 1 goal, and I think this was a home game for Armenia, and Hungary were expected to win this game, but I am still kind of surprised at how small the margin is. But Hungary were expected to win this game, and they did. They got the job done, and they were hoping to keep the job being done later on in the window, but this was just the first match. It was a pretty, in the grand scheme of things, it was a pretty uneventful match. And then we have the match between Azerbaijan and Iceland were expected to win this game, and they did. Once again, they just got the job done. Some of these matches I'm not really going to go over too much. There's not that much drama, all things considered. They were expected to do what they did do, and that's about it. Likewise for England versus Serbia, it's not a great showing for the new manager, but at the same time, this is England, so it's losing to England is kind of expected. But I think this does create kind of an interesting new identity for England almost, which is that they are a team that doesn't concede any goals, but they don't actually score that much either. Okay, sure, they did score 5 against Latvia, but neither against Serbia nor against Albania did England score all that much, really. So it is not a high scoring team, at least probably not compared to the last couple generations, but Thomas Tuchel is still getting the job done against relatively weaker teams. And then we had 2-0 Italy-Moldova. Let's just click into this for a minute. 70% possession, 25 shots, 9 shots on target, and they couldn't they couldn't score until the 88th minute. Italy, are you okay? Either that or Moldova suddenly stepped up after losing 11-1 to Norway. And I'm not sure they did, given the stats here, but how do you take until the 88th minute to score against Moldova? Gattuso, shut the hell up. You barely scored 2 goals against a team that Norway scored 11 against. And it took until the 88th minute to score against this minnow team, frankly. You don't get to blame other continents for having more teams when you can't even score more than 2 goals against freaking Moldova. Like, come on. This is not the Italy we once knew, and we'll get back to that. And the other game in this row was equally as insane. Ireland scoring 2 against Portugal. Look, I kind of want some credit for this, not for the Irish team, obviously, but I want some credit for saying that this could be a crazy game. I predicted 0-0 because in the last game between Portugal and Ireland, that was a home game in Lisbon, and they barely managed to get 1 goal past Ireland, and it was a home game. So this time it's an Irish home game, and we all know that Irish players just play a lot better under a home audience. What I didn't predict was Troy Parrott. I don't think most people predicted Troy Parrott. Like, he was a decently good striker, but I don't think most people anticipated Troy Parrott to become an Irish hero. But we'll get to the Hungary game, of course. But for now, this was absolutely insane. Like, Ronaldo getting red carded for the first time representing Hungary. He was so grumpy, and we'll get to another game later with Portugal. But Ireland scoring twice in the first half against Portugal, and managing to defend against all Portuguese attacks in the second half. Like, if you look at the stats, look, they're still not like dominating. There's still 72% possession from Portugal, but they didn't get a goal in. They didn't score. They actually had the same number of shots on target, except 2 of those shots on target were actually goals from the Troy Parrott. So it's a really special match that was only a prelude for things to come. After that, we have France versus Ukraine. 4-0, absolute destruction. You'd think at this point that Ukraine would just be hopeless, right? And they would probably lose against Iceland. Well, we'll get to that, but this was a crazy game for France and Ukraine, and it also shows, the Ukrainian team is pretty competent, but it is nothing compared to France right now. I'm not sure Mbappe was on the squad or not, but it was still an absolute destruction. And on the other side, we also have Albania 1-0 Andorra. This was also kind of nerve-wracking. It took very late into the match for Albania to score. I think Asilani at 67th minute. Some people have made this into a meme that I don't really understand, but he did score against Andorra, but that was just 1 goal, which I kind of think it's more Andorra stepping up, if nothing else, rather than Albania suddenly being bad. They are still pretty competent, but it's more that Andorra has also suddenly gotten competent as well. But then Malta beat Finland. I'm not sure how this happened. I did not watch the match, but this must suck for that one player who was retiring after this, and also another friendly match, to be beaten by Malta of all countries. Really? Yeah. It's not a great look, and this actually pushed Malta above Lithuania in the group, which is kind of bad. I mean, Lietuva, come on, do better. They actually Malta went past Lithuania in the group, which just a shame. But then we have Croatia 3-1 Faroe Islands, which honestly, all things considered, not that surprising. It was a Croatian home game. The Faroe Islands were always going to struggle against Croatia. Croatia won 1-0 in the home game in the Faroese home game. It was in Tórsvöllur. And if they could win in Tórsvöllur, which, mind you, Czechia did not, it's not entirely surprising that they won comfortably against the Faroe Islands in a Croatian home game. But nonetheless, this should not be taken as a setback for the Faroese team. They've done amazingly for a team of their size, and I dare say if there is any country that is going to beat Curaçao's record of being the smallest country to ever debut at the World Cup, watch this space. I think the Faroe Islands are absolutely the biggest candidate to debut at the World Cup as the new smallest country after Curaçao. But with that being said, that's going to be like a couple of years away, so we'll have to see what happens in the meantime. But let's move on to a very important match. Actually, we had Slovakia 1-0 Northern Ireland. My understanding is that this was a home match for Slovakia, and they beat them 1-0, and basically Northern Ireland didn't have the chance to equalize, basically, because up until this, I think if Northern Ireland had won, they could actually overtake Slovakia in the rankings. Wait, hold on. I got confused for a minute. But Northern Ireland, if they had won this match against Slovakia, which, mind you, they won against Slovakia last time, that would have sent them into the playoffs directly, not needing to have not needing to get in via the Nations League. But they didn't do that, so they were now banished to the Nations League, if you will. But this was not by any means like a landslide or anything like that. It was a really close match. You can see it was 1-0. So yeah, and then after that we had Germany 2-0 Luxembourg, which is an interesting result considering the next game Germany would go on to play. But this was expected of them. Germany being Luxembourg, they got the job done, so there's not really much to talk about there. I didn't watch the match. Then we move on to Montenegro 2-1 Gibraltar. A very pointless match because both teams are already eliminated, but it was kind of like a friendly, and Gibraltar got one of their first goals of the year, I think. That was certainly true for Liechtenstein. I don't know if it's true for Gibraltar, but effectively it's just a friendly. And then we also had Poland-Netherlands 1-1, which was interesting because I think this means now that in both matches, the Netherlands has not beaten Poland. But this doesn't really help in the grand scheme of things because the Netherlands has won more matches than Poland did, and that's why Poland are in the playoffs while the Netherlands qualify directly. After that, we had Kazakhstan versus Belgium 1-1. Now, initially I predicted that this would be an easy win for Belgium, but it turns out not only was Lukaku down because he was injured, De Bruyne was also down because of injuries, and they had to go away to Kazakhstan to play. It was an away game for Belgium, it was a home game for Kazakhstan, and Kazakhstan is, notably hard to play in because it's, part of it is in Europe and that's why it's playing in UEFA, but the major cities are geographically situated in Asia, and I'm pretty sure, again, I haven't looked at a map, but I'm pretty sure Almaty and Astana are further east than Moscow, so, it's a very long eastern-bound trip, but they still managed to not lose to Kazakhstan, which is good enough, and it sent them directly to direct qualification. We also had Turkey beat Bulgaria 2-0. Again, like the Germany game earlier, this was expected of them, and they firmly stay in the second position and go into the playoffs. Then we had... Considering what Wales would go on to do later, this is a very hilarious result of Wales only getting 1-0 against Liechtenstein. Some people pronounce it Liechtenstein or Liechtenstein, but I say Liechtenstein. It might be a little bit dated. I'm not really sure, but they only got 1-0 against Liechtenstein of all countries, which was kind of worrying going into the match with North Macedonia, but just you wait. And then Spain destroyed Georgia for the millionth time. Poor Georgia at this point. Let's move on to Austria versus Cyprus, where Austria went to Cyprus and won 2-0. I thought it would be an interesting match because neither Bosnia nor Romania could beat Cyprus on home soil, but Austria managed to do that, and they have now solidified their position at the top of the group. And speaking of Bosnia and Romania, they also played, and I thought this would be an interesting match, but Bosnia really showed up, and they scored 3 against Romania, who also got a red card. Again, I didn't watch a lot of these matches because they were taking place all at the same time. And then Denmark screwed up. Denmark 2-2 Belarus. A team of your caliber should not be drawing with freaking Belarus. Never mind, they were behind for a good almost 15 minutes. You can see they scored 2 goals in rapid succession around the 60th minute mark, and then it took another 14 minutes for Denmark to equalize. You just simply don't do this. You're Denmark. You're a top 10 team in the world, I think, or maybe like top 20 or something like that. I think they've dropped I can't even talk because of how unbelievable this result is. But I think they were at least like a top 20 team in the world, and I think after the most recent matches, they've dropped out of the top 20. I think as they should, and this was a home game. Parken is in Copenhagen. How do you draw against Belarus and only have 59% possession against Belarus? Do you understand just how absurd this is? No one expected this. Scotland didn't expect this. I will get to them in a second. I don't think even Belarus expected this. But here's the thing. People talk about the 4-2 game against Scotland, sure. But Scotland at least beat Belarus. Like, it wasn't a convincing game by any means. It was a 2-1. But they at least beat Belarus, who suddenly just woke up out of nowhere. Denmark could not beat Belarus, and I think this more than the actual game against Scotland was the spell of doom for Denmark, insofar as they now have to go to the playoffs, and Scotland doesn't. So this is just an absolutely insane result that I don't know how they got here. But Belarus scored out of nowhere in within the course of like 3 minutes, and it took the Danes another 14 minutes to equalize. Otherwise, Belarus would have won. Can we just think about this for a second? This is a competent Danish team. I'm pretty sure Højlund was on here. Or maybe it wasn't. I don't know. But Dorgu was there. Schmeichel, of course. You know, Damsgaard. These are fully competent Danish players. Isaksen. These are competent Danish players, and they can't beat Belarus. Think about that for a second. I'm sorry for dwelling so long on this, but this is an utterly insane result. The other results we had in this row was Kosovo beating Slovenia 2-0. This was a nice result for Kosovo because Slovenia historically likes to draw matches, but they didn't draw this time. In fact, they got a red card, and Kosovo beat them to start a good window into the playoffs. They have firmly put themselves in second place in the group, and it's a great day to be Kosovan, I guess, or Kosovar. And then, speaking of Scotland from earlier, they were beaten by Greece. Now, I'll be frank and honest, and this was a Greek home game. I think it was in Athens or something like that, and it wasn't easy. Okay, even the game where Scotland beat Greece in Hampden Park 3-1, that wasn't an easy game either. Greece were the much more dominant team. They had more possession. They were more aggressive with their attacks, but just none of them were landing. And in this case, even with this result, despite the result rather, Scotland was still putting up a hell of a fight in the last like 10-20 minutes. You know, it was 3-0 for a good amount of the game, but Scotland actually came back. You can see here, you can see all of the goals from Greece were scored before Scotland scored anything. And, you know, up until and these two goals were scored within 5 minutes of each other. And honestly, in the last 20 minutes, according to people who did watch it, because I didn't, according to people who watched it, it was almost going to be a tie if they had played for just a few more minutes. So it wasn't a great game. I mean, look at it, 9 shots on target, 17 shots. A lot of these came from the second half, and in fact from the last 10-20 minutes or something like that. So they really kind of came back, but it still wasn't enough to beat Greece. And at this point, without knowing the Danish result, they were thinking, man, we're screwed, right? You know, how could we lose this game while Denmark probably won against Belarus? Well, Denmark didn't win against Belarus, and this created a situation where Scotland were only 1 point behind Denmark, and if they could beat Denmark, Scotland could still qualify directly for the World Cup. In the same row, we also had the battle of the two SWs, Switzerland versus Sweden, and this was, I believe, the first game that we had Graham Potter as the manager, and it wasn't a great showing. Granted, it is Switzerland, but Sweden has, on paper, some of the strongest attack in Europe, but they just couldn't use that too much. They just couldn't put that to much good use, and Switzerland absolutely just destroyed Sweden. And this is not a great first match for Graham Potter. And trust me, the second one ain't much prettier either. But let's move on to the other games. And the first one I want to talk about, Hungary 2, Ireland 3. Listen, if you want someone to comprehensively review this match, go watch someone else. Go watch the Irish guy or someone else, or Zealandism or something like that. It's insane, the pure cinematics of this match. The things that are at stake in this match. It was absolutely insane. Now, I've actually prepared a couple of clips. Let's look at this first one. We'll look at the first 2 goals from Troy Parrott. I've got the sound off for a good reason, because this doesn't actually have the commentary. This was a penalty, and he scored it. They picked the right person to score, to go for the penalty, and he got it. And I think that penalty call was justified. And by the way, this was scored only when Hungary were already 1-0 up, and it was there was an early goal in the 4th or 3rd minute or something like that. But then around the 15th minute, Ireland got a penalty. I can't remember which player it was, but they got a penalty. Troy Parrott scored it, and and then after that, Barnabas Varga actually equalized with an equally insane goal, by the way. I have to admit, it was an absolute rocket, absolute laser out of nowhere. It was a really good goal. Okay, I will freely admit that, from Barnabas Varga. And then we get into the 80th minute. Well, this is the penalty. I probably should have played that well more, but this is the 80th minute. You can see the goalkeeper coming out, and then Troy Parrott just kind of susses out where he is, and then just scores from there. Just absolutely crazy. He's just in the front, like 1v1. I mean, arguably it's a 1v0, but he's battling out against the goalkeeper, and he gets it in, and Ireland equalized. I'm not showing that one, by the way. I want to show that with the commentary. But that was just an equalizer, and surely Ireland wouldn't win, right? Because as it stands, if it was a tied game, Hungary would be going to the playoffs, because Hungary were like 1 or 2 points above Ireland. Like, it couldn't happen, could it? I mean, you know the story from here. You've probably watched that goal 5, 10, 20 times at this point. But here is the goal in its full glory, starting with the GOAT, Caoimhín Kelleher.
One last throw of the dice. It's all on this from Caoimhín Kelleher. Scales is up after it. Scales wins the header. The chance! Yeah! Oh, there's the goal! That's Troy Parrott. That is unbelievable. He scored a hat-trick. And right at the death, Ireland have done it. I've never seen anything like it. Absolutely remarkable. Right at the end, Hungary had been caught. They were hanging on. It seems like for the whole night. Certainly when it went 2-2. This is just stunning. 3-2. The time is up. The referee has to finish the game.
Look at Soboslai.
Just make sure it's not offside.
I know.
That's the only thing we're concerned about. Just make sure this is not offside. But
5 goals in 4 matches, or arguably 5 goals in 2 matches.
Absolutely incredible.
Let's look at that again.
I don't want in case he's offside. He's not.
Oh, he's not.
It just comes in perfectly from Caoimhín Kelleher.
The scenes down below is absolutely incredible. All the
Ray, look at it again.
It comes in from Caoimhín Kelleher. An assist from I can't remember his name, sorry. Assist from someone. I can't remember his name, but it goes to the front. Look at him. He just tips it in, and the rest is history. So I'm not going to go through the rest of all of this. They're just basically trying to stay alive, and actually that includes a really aggressive attack from the Hungarian side. From, like, you can see here, there's a really aggressive attack from the Hungarian side.
Soboslai again, he gets away from Ida. Soboslai.
I think that's Soboslai. I'm not entirely sure. But Kelleher catches it, and that is basically the game. 3-2. The first ever Irish hat-trick away from home from Troy Parrott. And this sends Ireland to the playoffs. Just a week ago, Ireland were looking completely dead. Like, they had won 1 game against Armenia, but who cares? They had been beaten by Armenia previously, and they were also beaten 1-0 by Portugal. Like, how the hell do you come back from that? Well, apparently, this is how. You know, I'd like to use the phrase, luck of the Irish, but no, this is all down to 1, Troy Parrott, and 2, Caoimhín Kelleher. Before I get to Kelleher, though, let's kind of look at this video. There's so many things happening in this, including the guy in the high-vis outfit, and then this guy being very responsible with his, handheld luggage, but still celebrating. And there are so many of these clips all across Ireland and all across, arguably, the world, in Irish pubs worldwide, in North America, in Asia, everywhere, really. Irish pubs and, obviously Irish populations all across the world, all across Ireland, across the UK, just celebrations galore. And I just absolutely love these kinds of scenes. This isn't even through to the World Cup, mind you. This is coming back from the dead, and they're not going to directly qualify to the World Cup. What with Portugal in the group, but through just two absolutely insane games from Ireland, from Troy Parrott and from Kelleher, they made it. They did it. And speaking of Kelleher, let's replay this moment. Look at him. This was a penalty save from Caoimhín Kelleher. That, by the way, that is how you pronounce it. It's not spelled here, but Caoimhín is Caoimhin. But apparently the closest English approximation of his first name is either Caoimhín or Caoimhín, and he himself pronounces it Caoimhín, and that's also what you hear in the from the commentary. He says Caoimhín. So yeah, Caoimhín Kelleher. This was the game, the home game back in Portugal, by the way. This was in Lisbon. He got a penalty, but Caoimhín Kelleher saved it, and it was an absolutely masterclass. So, obviously, yes, massive kudos to Troy Parrott, but let's not forget about the GOAT, Caoimhín Kelleher, as well. These two, I think, are kind of single-handedly carrying Ireland right now into the playoffs, and we'll see how well they do there, which I'll get onto in a minute, of course. But on the other end of the group, we also had Portugal absolutely destroy Armenia 9-1. I think João Neves got a hat trick or something like that, but yeah, this game, incidentally, was the game without Ronaldo, because Ronaldo was red carded in the match against Ireland, and I think he's gonna be out for like 2 or 3 matches, maybe, which means he will be missing Portugal's first match in the World Cup itself, which is just glorious to me personally. But yeah, we had. But yeah, I think that's about that on the Hungary-Ireland game. I don't really have much else to say about that, but my God, that was an insane game. All the drama, all the dramatics. Yeah, I'm kind of just lost for words. So if that, yes, Ireland has beaten Hungary and wrestled their way into the playoffs via 5 goals over 2 games by Troy Parrott, and obviously a defensive masterclass by Caoimhín Kelleher. Let's move on to the next set of games, where we had Ukraine beat Iceland 2-0. Now, on paper, these two are a pretty even match. I would even give a slight edge to Iceland, because Iceland lost 2-1 to France once, and then tied with them, or drew with them 2-2 the second time. That was against France, whereas Ukraine got destroyed by France 4-0 earlier, as I already talked about. But that did not deter the Ukrainians, who beat Iceland pretty resoundingly. I had kind of a feeling that something was happening, because in the Icelandic home game in Reykjavik, I think it was Reykjavik, Ukraine still beat Iceland 5-3, but in this one there weren't as many goals, but Ukraine still managed to pull through, and I think this was the winner-takes-all match, and if the two of them can't decide who wins who is the better team, just do a head-to-head, and whoever wins that goes to the playoffs. So I think this result is fair enough. On the night, Ukraine were better. Iceland were, well, trying to defend mostly, but not entirely successful, as we can see. But yeah, unfortunately, Iceland are not going to the World Cup next year, but Ukraine still are in with a shot. Moving on to the other pairing in the group, we had France beat Azerbaijan. I'll be honest, I'm surprised the margin wasn't larger, but they were expected to do this anyway. They've already qualified, but yeah, so this was a game that was easy for Azerbaijan, or for France to win, rather, not for Azerbaijan. And then we had Serbia winning against Latvia. This was a match that didn't really matter because Serbia wasn't really going to go into the playoffs anyway, because Albania had the point advantage. But speaking of Albania, they also lost to England, as expected, really, although albeit with fewer goals than I may have anticipated, but maybe that's just a bit more of a competent team compared to like Latvia or something like that. Not much to talk about, but then we have Norway beating Italy 4-1. Now this was kind of insane. Like, okay, we had the match, the 2-0 against Moldova, that's one thing, but then for Norway to come to Italy, this was hosted in the San Siro, which is the home arena, or one of the home arenas for Italy. And then for Italy to score an early goal in the first half, in the 11th minute, they didn't score anything. Norway didn't score anything in the first half, by the way, and you're thinking, oh, God damn it, are Norway going to really bottle this? They didn't, and this was a similar case to the game against Estonia, where they really popped off in the second half. The first goal was actually scored by Antonio Nusa, and of course, 2 goals from Holland within like 2 minutes against Italy, which is just absolutely insane. And finally, practically at the death, Strand Larsen comes in the 93rd minute and scores another one for Norway. And from what I've read, this is Italy's worst home game loss in 70 years, which is absolutely insane. And ironically, they had more possession than Norway did, but Norway had more shots on target, and that's kind of what matters in the end, right? So yeah, it's crazy. And with this, Norway has now beaten Italy 7-1 over 2 matches, scoring at least 3 goals against Italy in 2 matches, which is absolutely just insane, and just a really good indication for the Norwegian team going forward. In fact, I've got this graphic here from the Twitter account Football Rankings. 8 matches, 8 wins, 0 draws, 0 defeats. I will say one thing that they have that is, I guess, inferior to England in this respect is that they have conceded goals. You can see here 5 goals conceded. I think actually their worst result was, I can't even remember, but they have conceded to every single team here, I think. I'm not entirely certain, but they've only conceded 1 goal to Italy. They've conceded more to the other teams, ironically, including 1 to Moldova in that 11-1 match, which I believe that 1 goal was actually an own goal, but whatever. Yeah, there was. They have conceded more goals to the other teams than they have to Italy, who they've only conceded 1 goal to, which is insane, and also equally an indictment on both Italy and Norway. It shows that Norway, they're not necessarily infallible. Their defense isn't perfect, but they can score 1,000,000 goals on you. I mean, come on, 37 goals scored across 8 matches, a 32 goal difference. Like, come on, why are people still underestimating Norway for the World Cup? I honestly think they could do a deep run, if not outright get to the finals. Like, sure, their defense isn't the best, but they can score a million goals on you, and at the end of the day, that's the stat that matters. You've got amazing talent across the entire team. Like, everyone's going on about Erling Haaland, but someone actually pointed out that if we removed every single goal that was scored by Erling Haaland, Norway would still have qualified directly to the World Cup itself directly. And even from this game alone, if you take away Erling Haaland's 2 goals, they would have still won against Italy 2-1. So this is not just a Haaland thing. Plus, Haaland has already been playing for Norway for a couple of years now. I think he started playing since he turned 18 and was able to represent Norway in the men's football team. But it's only this year that they've started really popping off, and so you can't just say, oh, it's Erling Haaland who's the greatest striker in the world or whatever. He does play a part in all of this, but he is not the sole reason for all of this success. You've got amazing wingers like Antonio Nusa. You've got amazing support from the likes of Odegaard. You've also got Strand Larsen and all of the other players who are creating a powerful offensive system, effectively, that's just scores a million goals against whoever they're going up against. So this is not a fluke. This is not a one-man job that was from Haaland alone. Haaland has scored a lot of goals, don't get me wrong, but this is not just of his own doing. This is the result of a good support system for Haaland, and also just really talented, really competent players in the likes of Antonio Nusa, in the likes of Strand Larsen, in the likes of Odegaard, and so on and so forth. This is a team that has serious potential, and I would not be surprised if they got all the way to the finals. They might even win the whole thing. I wouldn't say they're a favorite to win the whole thing, but I wouldn't rule them out at this stage, I'll be honest. So, yeah, this is a really strong Norway side, and you can argue, oh, they've just been playing easy teams. Italy is not an easy team, and you can make the same argument for England as well if you really want to go down that route, because England was also playing a lot of easy teams like Latvia, and relatively speaking like Albania, Serbia, Andorra. And ironically, against Andorra was one of their worst results from England. It was like 1-0 against Andorra, which is just absolutely insane. So this, they're playing easy teams arguments doesn't really hold, because especially if you're just trying to use it to prop up England in this argument, because that's not how it works. Both of them have been playing easy teams, and arguably Norway has had a more challenging second place to deal with, and yet they dealt with them comfortably. So yeah, I don't understand this argument against Norway and how they're apparently still not even a dark horse or something like that. The other match I'm not even going to talk about, completely useless. And then we had Poland 3-2 Malta. I don't know how this happened. It might have been a Maltese home game from the looks of it, but it's not like it really mattered at this point in time. It's not like Finland was going to qualify anymore. But it was a sudden crazy result where Malta apparently just turned up. Or maybe Poland just didn't play their best players because they were practically already through to the playoffs. I don't know. I didn't watch that match. I also didn't watch Czechia Gibraltar. They were expected to do that, to be honest. If they didn't, it would have been a national crisis. And then we also had Netherlands versus Lithuania. Again, they were expected to do this, although the last match was surprisingly close. I think it was like a 3-2 or something like that. I can't be bothered to look it up right now. But this time the victory was a lot more resounding. It was a home game for the Netherlands. And then we had Germany 6-0 Slovakia. I mean, what a way to take revenge, right? It was a home game for Germany, granted, but last time Slovakia beat Germany 2-0, and I guess they just weren't happy with that. Again, this is a really bizarre result in the grand scheme of things, because if we go back up a little further, Germany only beat Luxembourg 2-0, but they then proceed to beat Slovakia 6-0. Like, what universe are we living in right now? And also Northern Ireland managed to scrape a win against Luxembourg. It's like Luxembourg has suddenly shown up all of a sudden. And this was another funny game I really wanted to talk about. Montenegro and Croatia 3-2. This was genuinely hilarious. Montenegro were leading against Croatia until the 72nd minute. Now they got a penalty in the first 7 minutes, sure, but Croatia, are you good? Are you good? How did you take until the 72nd minute to equalize against Montenegro? Like, sure, you didn't have some of the best players here. I think Luka Modric wasn't on this squad, but still 63% possession. And you only managed to scrape a 1-goal difference win against Montenegro, who took until like the 70th something minute to equalize against Liechtenstein earlier. Like I talked about this in the last video. They had like a friendly or something like that, where they were playing against Liechtenstein, and it took them until the 72nd minute or something like that. Something as insane as this to equalize against Liechtenstein. How then did they manage to lead against Croatia until the 72nd minute? Like, I don't get it. Like, not that it matters, because Montenegro was not going to qualify and Croatia had already qualified, but still, even if you treat it as a friendly, this is an absurd result. I'm not super confident now about their abilities going into the World Cup. But let's move on. Speaking of minnows getting beaten, we've got Romania beating San Marino, but we had already gotten Bosnia beating Romania and Slovakia beating Northern Ireland earlier, so all the talk of San Marino going into the playoffs was already moot, because even Moldova wasn't going to get in. The 2 slots in the Nations League were just taken by Romania and Northern Ireland, so the discussion was effectively dead. So they still had to play the game, and they beat them pretty resoundingly. Although I will take a quick look at this. San Marino scored against Romania in the 2nd minute. Like, gosh, this day was just full of crazy, insane results, and 2 own goals for Romania, which, like, again, in the also I just realized this player's name's Dennis Mann. Anyway, this match does not matter, but it's still an absolutely insane result, and you may have already seen some of the other insane results. We'll get back to 7-1. Belarus, Greece 0-0. Did Belarus just suddenly decide to show up? How are they drawing with Greece and Denmark, and was barely beaten by Scotland? I don't know what happened in the Belarusian squad, but I guess they just suddenly started to show up all of a sudden. I don't get it. But they were hopeless anyway, so this match just ultimately didn't matter, whatever the result was. Yeah, this game also didn't matter. But Bulgaria won against Georgia. The punching bag of the whole group, beating Georgia, who had not that long ago gone to the Euros. I think they were just like downtrodden. They were just, I've used that word a lot today. I think they were just down and depressed and stuff like that, maybe, because otherwise that's kind of an inexcusable result for Georgia. You know, they are better than this. They are fully capable of beating Bulgaria. I'm not sure what happened here. And even more insane results that ultimately didn't matter. Spain and Turkey 2-2. I think Lamine Yamal is still is still out. He still got an injury, I think. But this was a really good result for Turkey. This obviously they were never going to qualify directly, but this gives them confidence and good vibes going into the playoffs. And then we had Slovenia and Sweden tied 1-1. Again, another not that great result for Sweden because, you know, the idea was that they appointed Graham Potter and Graham Potter would bring some positive change to the Swedish squad. Well, that didn't happen. Sweden and Slovenia drew, and Sweden officially ends their World Cup run, well, for now, as the lowest ranked team in a group including Slovenia and Kosovo. Absolutely wild scenes. Like, you would not have said this even like 2 months ago, but Sweden are last place. Let's just get the group out. Sweden are last place, having gotten 2 points over 6 games in a group with Slovenia and Kosovo in it. Like, okay, Switzerland is one thing, but Slovenia? Kosovo? Like, are you okay, Sweden? Do you need another new manager at this point? Because Graham Potter ain't doing it for you. But now let's finally get to the elephant in the room. Wales 7-1 North Macedonia. Let's just click into it at this point. Let's think about that for a second. A hat trick from Harry Wilson, who's the captain of the team. 7-1. 9 shots on target, 7 of those connected. And I don't really even know what to say to this. North Macedonia, mind you, they are not a bad team. Like, I'm not going to talk about the lineup. I don't know much about them. They're not a bad team. Look at them. They've won 2 games, drew 2 games, and one of those games was against Belgium, mind you. And then they just suddenly collapsed against Wales. Especially in a game that really theoretically didn't matter, because we're talking about 2 teams that both won their Nations League groups and would qualify for the playoffs regardless. So this match was kind of pointless. So, you know, why did Wales suddenly just show up with a 7-1? How do you do that against a Macedonia team that is famous for playing defensive football? I don't get it. I really don't. But yeah, this is just a crazy result. If you have the time, go and check out Brendan Johnson's goal as well. That was a really nice goal that Wales scored. That Brendan Johnson scored against North Macedonia. This has got to be a little bit soul-crushing for North Macedonia, even though they got into the playoffs regardless. And Wales are going to be looking really hot when we get to the playoffs, and I'm going to get to that in a minute. But absolutely insane scenes out here. Great result for Ireland, great result for Wales, and as we'll find out in a minute, an amazing result for Scotland. But for now, Wales destroy North Macedonia 7-1, and that doesn't change anything because Belgium, well, they get into second place, so they are seeded, or I think they're put into a different pot, but ultimately both teams are heading to the playoffs anyway, so in the end it didn't make much of a difference. They were never going to catch up with Belgium, who also dropped 7-0 against Liechtenstein. And then this was interesting as well. I didn't watch the match, but prior to this match, Granit Xhaka, you might know him, Swiss legendary, well, I don't know about legendary, but a really, really good Swiss national player. He's actually ethnic Albanian, but before the match, he kind of criticized some Kosovar Albanians for wanting to represent Kosovo instead of Switzerland, and that got people angry, understandably. And so Kosovo went out and drew with Switzerland. And mind you, these two teams are so far apart in terms of pure skill, and it's not even funny. But Kosovo went out and drew with Switzerland. So I consider this, maybe revenge for Granit Xhaka's comments against the Albanians, the ethnic Albanians who wanted to represent Kosovo as opposed to Switzerland. So, yeah, this was an entertaining result as well, all things considered. But then we had two matches that really, really mattered. The first one was Bosnia drawing with Austria. You might not think this is too significant, but let's look at the points. 19 and 17. Prior to this match, it was actually 17 and 16. Bosnia were actually ahead of Austria because Austria, I don't know, I don't actually remember Austria's exact schedule, but they were just beaten by Romania, whereas Bosnia resoundingly beat Romania, and they were actually ahead of Austria by 1 point. You might think this isn't a particularly special result, just a 1-1 draw, but if we look at the standings here, we have 19 and 17. That's the final standings. So prior to this game, they would have been 18 and 16, basically, and Austria were once again leading the group, but Bosnia were hot on their heels with 16 points. If they had won this match, they would have actually taken the first spot ahead of Austria, and Austria would have to go to the playoffs. But in this match, there was a very early goal from Tabakovic in the 12th minute, and then it took until the 77th minute for Gregoric to equalize against Bosnia. And can I just do a quick shout out for Gregoric, because look at that name. It's clearly spelt in German orthography, but that surname is very much Slavic, so it's kind of Slavic on Slavic action. Plus, let's not forget about Arnautovic, who scored 5 against San Marino or whatever. So yeah, it's an interesting insight into the kind of ethnic composition of Austria, where you have Slavs. I don't know if this is a Serb or Slovene, but a Germanized Slav playing on the Austrian team against an actual Slavic country. It's just a little interesting tidbit for myself, but yeah, in the 77th minute, Gregoric actually equalized against Bosnia, and after that, Bosnia were not able to get any more goals in, and it ends 1-1, which means Austria, they keep their position at the top, and they go directly to they go directly to the World Cup. In much the same way as Curacao held a draw against Jamaica. They were already top of the group. They just needed to draw, and they won. Well, and they drew in that game, so they did exactly what they needed to do to keep themselves at the top of the leaderboard. And now Austria are going to the World Cup, while Bosnia has to go through the playoffs, ironically, against a Wales who has beaten North Macedonia 7-1. And the final game from this batch that I want to talk about, this will go down in Scottish footballing history as one of the greatest days, one of the greatest evenings ever. And you don't need me to talk to you about the other cinematics of this entire match, but they were very, very much outplayed, and looking at the goals alone, you can tell this was dramatic. In the 3rd minute, okay, let's just look at a replay here.
Christie. ball back out there by Hickey. Scotland fans roaring for a penalty for handball there. Danes have contrived to give it away again. It is Gannon Doak with the tricks and McTominay!
God.
Brilliant placer from Scotland. Starting from Andy Robertson. One of the great Scotland goals.
Come on. 3rd minute? Bicycle kick? Come on. Like, this has got to be up there as one of the greatest Scottish goals of all time. And the fact that afterwards, after he scored it, he didn't celebrate with his teammates. He went to look for his mum. And I mean, you'd think that would be the end of it, right? 3rd minute, Scott McTominay, bicycle kick. And then Hoyland gets a penalty, or rather there's a penalty from that Hoyland takes, and he scores it. I'm not really gonna play that, but there was some sort of penalty essentially, and he scores it. And then Christensen, Rasmus Christensen, gets a red card in the 60th minute or 61st minute because of some shenanigans that John McGinn did. John McGinn right there, that's him, and he gets red carded. And you can you can argue about whether that was legitimate. There was some shenanigans there for sure, but what definitely happened in the end was that Christensen was sent off. Now this is the second goal. It's not as flashy perhaps as the other 2 goals, but let's look at it regardless. And that is Scotland back in the lead. It's a corner kick, and it could have been directly into the goal, or maybe it couldn't. We don't really know. What we do know is that it went from the corner, and it was already like 5 centimeters from the goal anyway. Let's look at it again very briefly. It was already like 5 centimeters from the goal. And Shanklin, that's Shanklin right there, just pushes it in, just easiest thing ever. And Schmeichel just doesn't have the time to react. So that was the second goal. Not a lot of people talking about it. And people are thinking, is that actually just a direct goal from the corner? And I'm not entirely sure. It could have been. I couldn't tell you, but if it did, it would be called an Olympico. I only learned this like last night. A direct goal from a corner is called an Olympico, but I'm not sure if that was an Olympico or not. But it doesn't really matter. Shanklin just pushed it in, easiest thing ever, and he did it, and it wasn't offside or anything. They're 2-1, and then. You can see here in the 82nd minute. I might as well just play the whole thing.
To stand firm in the face of this. Tierney's only half away. Dorgu 2-2.
And you can see some of the players just lying there. And yeah, Patrick Dorgu equalizes for Denmark once again. And you'd think surely that's the end of it, right? But yeah, Dorgu, that was a very clinical shot. You can see here. Yeah, that was just clinical, a dagger, as they say. And then you think, okay, is that the end of it? Surely that's the end of it, right? And then you have a significant chance, by the way. This was 86th minute-ish. That was John McGinn, I think. It was barely off. It hit the corner. It hit the corner of the post of the goal. And then here's this. I'm not even gonna talk too much about this, but let's just look at it, okay?
In from McGinn. It's away by Heelman. McLean. Denmark defending it well at the moment. As it comes to McGinn, it was a rocket to come off his own man. Off Hanley. McLean. Back in it comes. Ferguson's header given away, but it breaks to Tierney!
Just nuts, isn't this? That's Steve Clark right there, the coach. And you hear McLean mentioned a few times. We'll get back to him in a minute.
Back in it comes. Ferguson's
Here's the thing. Here's the moment where he's like, "I'm going to create history," and you know, I've watched videos kind of analyzing the whole game and how it went down and how Scotland managed to win against Denmark, and this was almost sheer luck. Like, he was not meant to score this goal, mind you, but Tierney is left-footed, which I think almost none of the rest of the squad, at least on the pitch right now, were. He is left-footed, and this ball rolls perfectly to him,
given away, but it breaks to Tierney!
And he just goes for it. You can hear the pop in the audience as well. It actually kind of breaks the microphone a little bit, and it is just insane. And you know, like I said, people talk about the tactics of how this happened, but it just came down to luck in the end. He's a left-footed player, whereas you know, a lot of other players tend to be right-footed, but he's left-footed and he's put on the right side, so when this comes to him, he just takes the shot and it goes in. There's not much else to it. And you'd think that'd be the end of it, by the way. Also, quick mention, this goalie, Kasper Schmeichel, is actually the current goalkeeper for Celtic, which is kind of hilarious. Another interesting coincidence, by the way, was that when Holland and co scored like 4 goals against Italy, the goalkeeper, Donnarumma, is in the same club. I think it's Chelsea. I don't follow club football. Donnarumma, the Italian goalkeeper, is in the same club and plays on the same squad as Erling Haaland. So actually, there's this one clip, I can't find it anymore, but there's this one clip after the Italy-Norway 4-1 game where Haaland actually goes up to Donnarumma and gives him a hug and some kind of encouraging words before joining the rest of the squad in celebration. And yeah, it's just some interesting coincidences that collide between club football and international football, that you might be forced to effectively score against your own teammates. So yeah, it's just some interesting coincidences and things that happen that coincide. Well, that's a coincidence. I'm starting to run out of words. It's 8 a.m. at this point. I'm going slightly crazy. Anyways, back to Scotland. Like, you think at this point, we're 7.5 minutes past the original allotted 6 minutes. Surely they're just gonna call it, right? Nope, the ref doesn't call it. And
Kept alive by Froholt. And Schumann.
That's McLean. You can hear the commentators shouting, shoot, and...
He's going to shoot. Is that
God. The sheer cinematics of this game.
I've seen anything quite as incredible and dramatic as Kenny McLean. With practically done it. And just look at this.
From the halfway line.
Absolutely clinch it. The goal of his dreams from Kenny McLean.
Schmeichel can't even catch up with it. Just some absolutely crazy scenes, and amidst all of the celebration, they called full time, and there you have it. 4-2, Scotland, Denmark, at home in Hampden Park. The scenes all across Scotland, all across the UK where there are Scottish populations, the scenes are just absolutely insane. If you have the time, go back, listen to some of the different alternate commentaries. You have some for like the BBC Radio. You have other commentators on different radio stations as well. And yeah, it's just absolutely insane. You know, go back and watch this highlight video. It's on YouTube. Actually, it's not like geo-blocked or anything like that, at least not for myself. So yeah, but a lot of people talking about, you know, the tactics of the game, but in the end, to quote some people that I saw on Twitter, fortunately, the game is played on grass, not on paper. So yeah, that is Scotland versus Denmark. You can see here a lot of the stats are actually dominated by Denmark. 64% possession. They were, you know, pushing Scotland around for much of the game, actually, like in this kind of stretch when Hoyland scored the penalty and the period after that, and they were actually kind of pushing Scotland around. But in the last like 10 minutes, it's just absolute magic coming from Scotland. And you know, certainly playing in a home ground helps, but just absolutely crazy all-timers for Scottish football, really. Like Scott McTominay's bicycle kick, Kieran Tierney's left-legged kick, left-legged dagger, whatever you want to call it, and finally, of course, Kenny McLean's shot from all the way at the halfway line, and it just hits it, and Schmeichel can't even catch up with the ball because it's going so quickly. God, what else can I say? This is, like, I've been following Scottish affairs and Scottish football for the last couple of years, but this has got to be the greatest game that I've ever watched from any Scotland team. This was magnificent, and Scotland are now going directly to the World Cup for the first time in 20 years, in almost 30 years, for the first time since 1998. Same as Norway and same as Austria, actually. And it would have been the same as Jamaica as well if they make it out of their group. But I already talked about that in the previous video, and I don't think they will. I don't think they'll survive against a great DRC. And you can already see some of the playoff teams here, so let's actually go to a graphic for that. This is from the UEFA account, official one. And this is a draw that ended up happening, but it also omits some of the teams that might host the games. But let's go through them one by one. First, let's go Path A. Let's start with Italy versus Northern Ireland. I mean, with due respect, I would love to see Northern Ireland upset Italy, but I kind of have a feeling the upset is coming from the other side of the path, so I would predict Italy to win against Northern Ireland. For Wales against Bosnia, I would actually pick Wales because, first off, they already have a higher FIFA ranking as far as I'm concerned, and again, Wales are going to be going into the playoffs in good spirits after they destroyed Macedonia 7-1, and that's a Balkan team, and maybe they can just do that again for this Balkan team. Who knows? But I'm still like overall favoring Bosnia. And then Wales versus Italy. That's my prediction. Of course, it could be completely wrong, like I was with Africa. Wales versus Italy. What hasn't been mentioned here is the home games for these teams. And actually, Wales has the home game for this one. So if Wales wins against Bosnia, Italy are traveling to Cardiff to play against Wales. And the Cardiff stadium is absolutely insane. It's like 60,000 capacity. And the crowd just goes completely wild. The same way that the Irish crowd went wild in the Aviva. Or obviously the Scottish crowd in Hampden Park in Glasgow. So I think I'm really sorry, Italy, but I'm going to favor Wales for this. I'm going to favor Wales to win against Italy. 1-0 maybe, or 2-0, something like that. And Italy are going to miss out on their third straight World Cup. This might sound harsh, and it might be surprising that I'm favoring Wales over Italy, considering the whole footballing legacy. But if you can barely score 2 goals against freaking Moldova, I'm not sure you have much hope against Wales, which are looking genuinely really competent right now. So yeah, I'm going to predict Wales qualifies from Path A against Italy. For Path B, I'm actually going to start on this side because Sweden sucks, so Ukraine goes to the final. I think that's a pretty easy deduction, to be honest. People are somehow still rating the Swedish team. I don't think Graham Potter has done them any favors. In fact, they may have made them worse. But Sweden just sucks right now, so Ukraine goes through easily. Poland versus Albania. I think I would still go with Poland. Albania are surprisingly competent, no offense, but I think Poland are still just a lot more competent in the playoffs. They just know what they're doing. And also they have players like Lewandowski, for example. So I would favor Poland to go to the final, and this would be challenging because Ukraine actually gets the home game for the final. But Ukraine can't actually play in Ukraine, so they usually have their quote-unquote home games either in Poland or in Hungary. So ironically, if they get the home game, which they will if they beat Sweden, if they get the home game might actually end up being a home game for Poland anyway. So that could be funny, but we'll see what happens for sure. We don't know exactly who Ukraine are going to choose. Well, where Ukraine are going to choose for their home games. It might be Hungary, it might be somewhere else. But usually it's either Hungary or Poland from my experience. But I'm actually going to pick Poland to win against Ukraine regardless. And Poland will qualify from Path B. And then we move on to Path C, where honestly this is the least certain path. I think there are a number of possibilities, and I would not rule out really any of them. I think any of these 4 could conceivably qualify, but how I see it is that Turkey will beat Romania and Kosovo will beat Slovakia. This is a really, really competent Kosovar team that the most competent one I've seen in quite a while. And, I might be overrating them a little bit, but they drew with Switzerland in their last game in the actual formal qualifiers. So they must be feeling good right now going into these playoffs. So I would actually rate them above Slovakia in that sense. And I think we're looking at Turkey versus Kosovo. And this one is really hard to call. What is definitely true is that I think this was probably the most ideal draw for Kosovo. This is probably their best shot at debuting in the World Cup. But I'm still going to go for Turkey to win against Kosovo, and Turkey qualifies from Path C. And finally, Path D. I mean, do I go with my brain or with my heart? My heart says Ireland. My brain says Denmark. But I don't know which one I should choose, because this is not peak Denmark. We are nowhere near peak Denmark. And Macedonia has been known to knock out big teams in the past. You know, Italy would know all about that. But on balance, I do still think Denmark could still win against Macedonia. Not going to be a big score, though, like 1-0, 2-0, something like that. Macedonia just plays excellent defensive football. So I think Denmark will definitely qualify to the final. This is harder to call because it's Ireland who basically snuck into this last minute versus a pretty competent Czechia team. Pretty competent being relative, of course, because if you look at Czechia's recent history, even notwithstanding the match where they lost to the Faroe Islands, they had a friendly with San Marino at home. It was in Prague, I think, and they only beat San Marino 1-0. This is about as embarrassing as Italy getting 2-0 against Moldova, or Denmark getting 2-2 against Belarus. You just don't do that. I don't care how bad your team is. If you're a team that is like 30-something in the world, you should not be getting 1-0 results against San freaking Marino. So, I don't know. I'm cautiously optimistic. You know, Ireland, they've already beaten a pretty competent team in Hungary away. I don't see why they couldn't do that again. And this Czech team has its ups and downs, and right now I would say they're not looking so hot. I say it's an Ireland-Denmark final. And you know what? I'm going to go with my heart. I say Ireland wins the whole thing. Well, not the World Cup, of course. Wins the whole path. Why? Because the last game... so, if Ireland beats Czechia away, it's a game, I think, in Prague, and Denmark beats Macedonia, we'll set up for a final between Denmark and Ireland. And I'm going to go with my heart. I'm going to say Ireland wins against Denmark. How do I know this? Well, I don't, but this is a home game for Ireland. This is in the Aviva Stadium, or Aviva something like that. I don't remember what the actual name of the structure is called, but it's in the Aviva. It's a home game. It's the same venue where Ireland beat Portugal 2-0. And Portugal are a way more competent team than Denmark right now, and I'd say for the majority of the last few years. If Ireland can get around a team that has Ronaldo in it and score 2, I don't see why they couldn't do the exact same thing against Denmark. But of course, on the flip side, we also have to think about how utterly crushing it must be for Denmark to first be beaten by Scotland in a Scottish home game, to then be beaten by Ireland in an Irish home game. Gosh, that's gotta suck. But honestly, I don't think it's impossible. I think I can genuinely see a world where that happens. So, yeah, I think I'm going to leave you with that. We can take a look at the overall results. You can see here, all of these matches are actually taking place, well, the semifinals are taking place on the 27th. And then I think probably like a week later or a few days later, we're going to get the final of these matches. But yeah, I will be returning in mid to late March to commentate on the European playoffs, and also the playoffs for in the Interconfederation playoffs, which are also taking place roughly around the same time, late March. So I'll be back around that time or so to comment on kind of my predictions for that, because between now and then there are going to be more friendlies, and I think I saw somewhere that Norway are going to play the Netherlands, so that's going to be a really fun one to watch. Sometime in March, they're going to have a few more friendlies, and we can better gauge, for example, how well teams like England and teams like Norway are doing with respect to the other teams that have qualified automatically in Europe. And also, of course, we've got some other friendlies as well. I'm going to do a quick mention of them. We had Cape Verde draw with Iran in there was this weird tournament thing that took place, I think, in like Saudi Arabia or something. Cape Verde drew with Iran, which is arguably one of the top 3 teams, if not the best team in all of Asia right now. They drew with Iran 0-0, and then Iran won on penalties. And then not long after that, Iran played another game against Uzbekistan, and Uzbekistan, I think it was also a draw, and I think Iran also won this one, but it was a very even game all across, and it just goes to show you that this whole argument that, expanding the World Cup format brings in random countries that are no good is just complete bunkum. These are teams that are competent, because remember, they were not just randomly picked out of a hat. If we look at some of these debutants, we have Curacao, who Jamaica failed to beat, and Jamaica is one of those major teams in CONCACAF, mind you. They failed to beat Curacao across 2 matches. And then we had Cape Verde, who obviously tops their group. They beat Cameroon 1-0. So these are not teams that are bad by any means, by any stretch of the imagination. And so it's really frustrating when some people are like, oh, why are we letting these random teams in? Because these random teams beat the proper, established, and competent teams. That's why. And so I think this argument that all these random countries debuting are terrible at the game are just nonsense. We're looking at proper, competent teams that have been beaten by these newcomers, like Uzbekistan, like Jordan, like Cape Verde, like Curacao. And at the end, but going back to Europe though, we might still see Kosovo qualify for the World Cup for the first time in their history. And these are the final standings for the European qualifiers. We have the automatic qualifiers, of course: Germany, Switzerland, Scotland, France, Spain, Portugal, Netherlands, Austria, Norway, Belgium, England, and Croatia. And we also have all of the second place teams that are going into the UEFA playoffs: Czechia, Albania, Wales, Italy, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Poland, Ireland, Turkey, Ukraine, Denmark, Kosovo, Slovakia, and also the 4 Nations League entrants, which are Northern Ireland, Sweden, Romania, and North Macedonia. So those are the teams that we have for the UEFA playoffs, and I leave you with this graphic of all the teams that have thus far qualified for the World Cup. Obviously, we have the hosts: Mexico, USA, and Canada, or as I like to call them, the cum countries. Japan, Iran, South Korea, Australia, Qatar, Uzbekistan, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Morocco, Senegal, Egypt, Algeria, Tunisia, Ivory Coast, South Africa, Cabo Verde or Cape Verde, Ghana, Panama, Haiti, Curacao, Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, Uruguay, Ecuador, Paraguay, New Zealand, Spain, France, England, Portugal, Netherlands, Belgium, Germany, Croatia, Switzerland, Austria, Norway, Scotland, and we have 4 more spots for the UEFA playoffs and 2 more spots for the Inter-Confederation playoffs. And that is where I will leave it. Thank you for watching this video. If you have enjoyed it, like the video, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss my upcoming content, be it World Cup related or otherwise. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.